Chapter 190. 2. Seeing the king of assassins again who could have killed so many sting butterflies of deceased souls. Only to fill up the boglands, to be able to step over their corpses, walking across like it was flat ground. Looks like someone had gotten ahead of us to cross over to the other side first. A femininely beautiful man said scoffingly with a laugh. Although the sting butterflies of deceased souls are low-level demon beasts, but they live in a swarm. If anyone agitates them, they will always attack together in one big swarm, gnawing on the offender till he's nothing but bones, so no one would carelessly want to get such a great number of these pesky and highly vengeful fellas riled up. Moreover, it is really no easy task to kill so many countless sting butterflies of deceased souls. I wouldn't mention it if this was done by a large group of people, but the wounds on every one of these sting butterflies of deceased souls look exactly the same. It is clear to see that it was all done by the hands of one single person. Qing Bei carefully gauged the situation with all the sting butterflies of deceased souls covering over the entire boglands, and it was after a moment that he slowly started to say, "These are sword wounds. This person must be an expert with a sword, capable of incredible speed, killing with a single stroke. Moreover, you can see that the wounds are inflicted on the exact same spot on all the corpses, delivered with great precision. I would think that from the moment the sting butterflies of deceased souls noticed the intruder to the point of their deaths, it did not take longer than 5 breaths' time. People as skillful as that, number not more than 3 throughout the lands." After hearing his observations, the group of people looked at him with could not help but change. The man carrying him who had been fierce and hostile all this while did not berate him this time but asked him in surprise, "Kid, how did you know all this?" "I can see it with my own eyes," Qing Bei said with an astute smile. "I was trying to ask you just now, whether all of you are looking for something as I might be able to help in some way. I can be quite useful, you know." Among those 10 over people, a tall figure suddenly came forward, a man seemingly about 20 years of age with a pair of strikingly good-looking eyes, but a horizontal scar running from one side of his forehead to right between his brows made him look fierce. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He signaled to the burly man by lifting his chin slightly, indicating for the man to put Qing Bei down. His feet finally on firm ground, Qing Bei stretched his stiffened body a little, as it felt great to not be carried around like a gunny sack. He did not know who he was able to confine himself in a wheelchair in the past, pretending to be crippled for several long years, no longer wanting to experience the feeling of having his body's movements restricted anymore. The young man with a scar across his face then curved up the corners of his lips in a smile, looking so gentle and harmless, but his voice was matured with a slight raspiness, completely different from his outlook, sounding like the voice of a man who had long undergone the grind through the vestiges of time. If just by hearing his voice, one would think that he was a middle-aged man about 40 to 50 years of age. "Our young brother here is quite knowledgeable indeed. As you are from the Faint Mist sect itself, you should be more familiar with this place than we are." The meaning of those words meant that he wanted him to lead the way for them. No matter whether there was any danger, he would now be the one testing the waters for them on the route ahead. Chapter 190. 3. Seeing the king of assassins again, Qing Bei gave a shrug. "I am a new disciple who has joined for barely less than a year, and I do not even know how big the Faint Mist sect is in its entirety, much less ever set foot into these forbidden grounds." Noticing the temperature of the man's eyes dropping a little, Qing Bei regained his smile and said, "But, although I have not come into these forbidden grounds before, I still possess the ability to walk out from this place safe and sound." The man nodded and said, "I was not wrong about you. But what we seek is not to get out of this place safely. There is something in here that we need to bring out from here." Qing Bei then went on to say, "Might I be a little nosy and just ask out of curiosity, what is it that all of you are seeking to take?" The man laughed softly and his gaze turned to sweep over the boglands that was covered with sting butterfly of deceased souls' corpses. "We'll chat as we walk." Someone has already managed to snatch the lead on us, and these sting butterflies of deceased souls' corpses will disintegrate in another half hour at most. We will not be able to cross it even if we want to when that happens. Upon saying that, the man tapped the point of his toes lightly and his tall figure took the lead to cross the boglands, while the others began to follow suit. Just what could these men be searching for? What is hidden here within the faint mist sex forbidden grounds, that had drawn these extraordinarily skilled experts here? Qin Bei's eyes flashed slightly as he formed his own thoughts about the situation in his mind. If these people were to do anything against the faint mist sect, he would definitely have to stop them. On the other side, Qin Yu followed Meatball and had walked for a good while. She did not know where they were, but the little one suddenly stopped in its tracks and did not continue to walk. Qin Yu arched an eyebrow and asked, "What? Little Bei in here?" The little beast on the ground shook its head and lifted its large eyes up to look at her. "Mother, we've walked for so long. Meatball is a little hungry. You still have not found the target with your mission not yet completed and you are already thinking about food?" Qin Yu said, her eyes seemingly mocking as she looked at the little beast. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Meatball stretched a tiny paw out and scraped it against the ground lightly, its short stubby tail wagging left and right adorably as it tried to negotiate further. "Mother, after eating my fill, I will then have the energy to work." Qin Yu was really helpless against this little glutton, dropping the ball at such a critical juncture. She bit her lip to give it a thought before giving up. Who asked the little fella to be so adorable? Really just can't do anything about it. All right. Then make it quick. Go catch whatever you want to eat. Although the little beast was an easy pet to keep, it was really picky about its food. It disliked anything that wasn't meat, but it was an absolutely excellent hunter. Don't just see it as a tiny cuddly ball, it was able to hunt down a spirit beast that was 100 times bigger than it was effortlessly. As expected, it was just a short while later that the little ball of coal came back dragging a large floppy-eared hare. Chapter 190. 4. Seeing the king of assassins again, the rabbit was all covered in blood, but it was not yet dead. Its eyes were filled with terror and despair, staring in utter disbelief like it had never expected that it would fall into the paws of such a remarkable-looking little ball of coal, which was most devastating and terrifying. Meatball dropped the rabbit just by Qin Yu's side, its large eyes blinking like it was asking to be praised. Qin Yu could not help but laugh as she shook her head. "Why are you the same as that unicorn? Both of you like eating rabbits just as much." Meatball tilted its head to one side, and answered truthfully, "Actually, it isn't that I like it very much, but it's just because these floppy-eared rabbits are easiest to catch, and Mother wants me to settle it quickly." When the floppy-eared rabbit that was on its last breaths heard the little ball of coal say it was easiest to catch, the rabbit almost died from indignant rage. That tiny black ball is really such a bully. It has already been captured, must it still suffer such humiliation? Qin Yu did not bother with the little beast anymore but went on to clean and prepare the rabbit. She stuffed some spices inside the meat and lit a fire under a rack to start roasting. The little beast's face was filled with longing as it crouched there to watch the fat and succulent rabbit cook, excitement rising in its heart, like it had gone hungry for a very long time when it had actually just eaten quite a lot in Qin Yu's dimensional space not too long ago. After having appeased the little beast, Qin Yu then lifted her eyes up to survey the surroundings. How long had they walked in these woods for? Why have they not gotten through these trees yet? Is Meatball really reliable or not? But, isn't it said that these forbidden grounds are highly dangerous and filled with countless traps everywhere? Why has it been so quiet the entire way? Not only has there been no sign of danger anywhere, she had not seen a single spirit beast, the only single exception now cooking on the rack. Just what is happening here? The meat over the fire was sizzling and crackling deliciously, roasting it had given it an aromatic golden juicy sheen. Qin Yu was a little distracted with her thoughts when the expression on her face suddenly changed as she raised her eyes to stare further up in front. The soft sound of footsteps were coming from that direction and was coming closer, the aura hard to read, a highly skilled unfathomable expert carrying the stench of blood so heavy like she had never smelled before. Meatball crinkled up its nose, the heavy stench of blood spoiling its mood in wanting to enjoy its delicious food. Sometimes, it doesn't pay to have such a keen sense of smell. Mother. The little beast sounded out a warning. Jun Yao stroked its head reassuringly and said, "It's all right. It's probably just someone passing by and does not have any bad intentions." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Passing by. The faint mist Sex Forbidden Grounds is really quite a popular hotspot, attracting so many unwelcome guests. After a while, the owner of those footsteps finally came into view, dressed in a wide voluminous ink-colored cape, seemingly carrying something in one hand wrapped up in a brocade cloth. The person's dressing made him look a little like a killer or an assassin, except that the man's face was clearly revealed to all. Isn't he afraid that anyone would recognize him? Moreover, with that thing he carried in his hand, Jun Yao was rather certain that it belonged to these forbidden grounds. Jun Yao was calm and unruffled as she watched the man came walking in closer. But when she was able to get a clear view of the person's familiar countenance, she was stunned in her spot. Why? It's him. Chapter 191. 1. This killer isn't that cold, and a little adorable. Ever since she came to this other world, Jun Yao had seen rather many types of men with outstanding looks. Jun Yao and Bai Ji Yan could be considered to be the leading ones, and even Feng Tianhen, whose body had been overtaken, was incredibly handsome, fine as jade. As time went by, she became so accustomed to seeing beautiful men that it was now nothing extraordinary. So, rarely would she become stunned by a man the moment he appeared. But this person before her eyes, back when she saw him for the first time, Jun Yao had already been mesmerized by his countenance. And at that time, he was unconscious and had not opened his eyes at all. But even then, it was already astounding enough. His skin was fair but did not make him look weak, his ink-black hair tied up with a single silver band. Under his long slanted brows reaching into his temples was a pair of beautiful eyes slanting upwards at the corners like a crimson phoenix's. His nose bridge was high and straight, giving him a slightly callous look, his slightly thin lips tinged just a faint pink, that made him look a little unexpectedly adorable. Of course, the most eye-catching feature on this handsome face was just at the corner below his left eye, a fingernail-sized black blossom. Although the flower was tiny, but it was in such fine detail that the pattern on every single petal could almost be clearly seen. Back when they met for the first time, the flower had only blossomed slightly, but now it had bloomed completely, looking both beautiful and incredibly devilish, with a spot on vermilion red in the heart of the flower, like an eye that was actually watching you. Jun Yao could not help but be surprised by it. What species was that flower? She was actually unable to identify it. Probably because she had been staring directly straight at him, it was impossible for him to disregard it even if he wanted to. Shi Zhanchen swung an indifferent gaze over in that direction, showing no emotion till he saw the roasting rabbit that was glistening with oil over the fire in front of the young lady, where his expression showed a brief moment of surprise. He had thought that the people who had gotten in his way previously had set up an ambush in this place, but looking at it again, it didn't really look like it. But to be able to be so laid back and relaxed in a place like this, she could not be any ordinary person. In order to not create any unnecessary trouble, Jun Yao chose to turn her eyes away, and did not look at him anymore. Shi Zhanchen did not want to waste time as well. Since she was not an enemy, he was not going to strike at her, but just went on to walk slowly past with his eyes fixed in front. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. And just as the man was slowly walking past, from the package he carried in his hand, a drop of bright red liquid fell to the ground. The sound was almost inaudible, but Jun Yao still noticed it. What? Is that thing inside? Without giving him even a single moment to think, several shadows suddenly fleeted past through the air. Jun Yao then discovered something that wasn't all that great. She seemed to have been seen as a companion of the man, finding herself being surrounded together with him. The shadows landed on the ground, and several black-robed assassins blocked their way in front. The man standing in the lead then said in a grim voice, "Zhan Chen, hand over the sacred Buddha palm lotus." Chapter 191. 2. This killer isn't that cold, and a little adorable. The sacred Buddha palm lotus, shaped like a human palm, its flower petals white, but its sap bright red like blood. Legend has it that it can resurrect a person, a divine herb that is able to remodel one's soul, a flower that blooms only when the season is just about to turn to early spring, where it will present its truest form. At all other times, it is merely a most common white lotus, and is of no beneficial use in any way. Only one single sacred Buddha palm lotus will mature every year, as when it blooms, it will tyrannically suck away the essence of all other lotuses around into itself, to become the most outstanding overlord among all flower blooms. It was said that it grew in a place many feet deep underground, and was guarded by high-level demon beasts, extremely difficult to get. In that package. Could it be the legendary sacred Buddha palm lotus? The look in Qin Yu's eyes changed slightly. These people who have appeared within these forbidden grounds so suddenly are here because of it. And what was even more unbelievable is that the sacred Buddha palm lotus is in the Faint Mist sect. What are these people's intentions in getting their hands on the sacred Buddha palm lotus? Faced with the malevolently murderous black-robed assassins, Zhan Chen merely curled up a corner of his lips in an almost imperceptible smirk, his voice soft and gently pleasing as he said, "You know me? Ha! The greatest divine great assassin throughout the lands, who doesn't know you? It is said that never had anyone ever lived at Zhan Chen's hands, so I would really like to find out myself, to see if you're really as good as those rumors say." The assassin leader's words were laced with barbs, and his gaze suddenly turned to look at Qin Yu just a short distance away. The scorn on his face grew more intense and he said, "The greatest assassin is indeed different from others, even needing a beauty to accompany him when carrying out a mission. What a pity for this little beauty, as she will not be so lucky to live through today." Qin Yu was at a loss for words. What does this mean? Are they going to start with her? She was keeping such a low presence here. Who has she offended? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU huddled beside her, the tiny beast silently took a bite of the succulently roasted rabbit, and then mumbled almost unintelligibly with its mouth full, "Mother, they seem to have misunderstood. Are you going to explain it to them a little? Little one, you're really so innocent. Who will believe you even if you tell them you're not together in this affair? Moreover, this bunch of fellas look like they would rather kill off an innocent person rather than mistakenly let off an accomplice. Even though it's true that they are not accomplices of Zhan Chen, this bunch of assassins will definitely not be so benevolent to let them go." Just as those thoughts were running through her mind, she suddenly heard Zhan Chen open his mouth to say, "I am not acquainted with this person, and she does not have anything to do with this. Do not implicate people who are not involved." Qin Yu could not help but be taken aback a moment. She had not thought that the King of Dark Nights, called the Merciless Reaper of Souls in the rumors, was not exactly a person like she would have imagined. Chapter 191. 3. This killer isn't that cold, and a little adorable, she thought. Even if he did not make any moves to kill her, he would definitely not bother about her at all. Never had she expected that he would open his mouth to try to absolve her of any involvement. Qin Yu's lips curved up into a smile. What an exceptional kind of assassin, not acquainted. Then why are you speaking up for her? So the greatest assassin throughout these lands is actually so benevolent and merciful. But regardless of whether you know each other or not, this woman will leave her life behind here today. The person who said that was another man standing on the left of the leader. He had a smug and arrogant look on him as the expression on his face froze for an instant behind his face veil. A thin line of blood appeared on his neck, as it turned into a tiny stream that flowed into his shirt collar, slowly dripping onto the soil, staining the ground red beneath his feet. The others standing close to him did not even have time to react, but just wondered why he was suddenly not doing anything, and before they could even reach a hand out to touch him, the man's body had already fallen heavily to the ground with a crash. Blood sprayed out madly onto the ground under his body. That sudden turn of events caused the faces on the group of assassins to change immediately. What is going on? Who was the one that made that move? It must be him. The greatest assassin throughout the lands was not only nicknamed the Soul Reaper, it was rumored that the speed of his sword was at a level that belonged to an entirely different realm. No one has ever seen his sword before, and that was how the fame of his quick blade came about, because the speed of his sword was matched by no other, where anyone who saw him wield his sword was already dead. No one lived before Shi Zhanchen's blade, and that was no mere rumor. The reason all these people before him were still living was only because he was too lazy to make a move against them. Shi Zhanchan, you have better not carry things too far. I do not believe with so many of us here, that we're unable to take you down. When one of the assassins shouted out in rage, several figures charged forward to surround him. In Shi Zhanchen's eyes, these people were merely a bunch of insects, who could be dealt with in just one breath's time. But without even waiting for him to make a single move, the bodies of the assassins suddenly started to twitch and spasm one after another, their hands clutched around their own necks as they ended their own lives. Not knowing how to react, Shi Zhanchen was a little dumbfounded for once. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. But something seemed to dawn upon him the next moment when he turned to look at the young lady who had come to stand up from the ground. She dusted her palms and noticing that he was looking at her, she gave him a mischievous smile and said, "Villains usually die due to having talked too much." Shi Zhanchen almost smiled as he said to her, "It's not safe here. You'd better leave quickly." Upon saying that, he turned himself around and continued on his way. Qin Yu saw that and she went following behind him. The little ball of coal who had dealt with an entire roasted rabbit at an unthinkably incredulous speed also quickly hopped itself up onto Qin Yu's shoulder. Chapter 191. 4. This killer isn't that cold, and a little adorable Shi Zhanchen heard footsteps behind him but did not turn around, and merely just said in an emotionless voice, "You'd better not follow me. Careful, as that might invite mortal disaster onto yourself. Just going the same way." "I'm not following you," Qin Yu replied. The man did not say anything else. Qin Yu quickened her steps to catch up and posed him a question. "Are you really Shi Zhanchen, the Soul Reaper who had killed countless people?" "What, I don't look like it." Seeming to find her rather interesting, Shi Zhanchen was not stingy with his words as he responded to her. For a killer to be as kind as you, it must be rather tough, isn't it?" Qin Yu voiced out the thing puzzling her. "Kind?" Shi Zhanchen arched up an eyebrow. That was a refreshing choice of words to describe him. "It is said that you do not harm the frail elderly and children, and rejects missions where there is too great a disparity in power, as that would make you look like you're bullying the weak, disliking one-sided battles." Hearing that, Shi Zhanchen laughed softly and then said slowly, "I grew up in the poorest slums, the lowest rungs of society in these lands when I was very young. A gang of bandits then came to loot and plunder the place. As I was the youngest one there, it was the people living there who were seen by society to be lowly like common grass that gave up their own lives to enable me to live. Ever since then, that was the rule I set for myself. No matter who, everyone had a soft spot deep in their hearts." For Shi Zhanchen, it was this memory from when he was a young child, when his life was without worries. Although he did not have riches and honor, nor lavish clothes or fine food, that was when he was happiest without much of a care, contented with life. Now, he has more gold and silver than he can count, holds highly enviable powers and status, but he was unable to find the same feeling he felt when he was a young child. Qin Yu was a little surprised. Clearly, she had not thought that her innocuous attempt to get closer to the man, as she harbored designs on the sacred Buddha palm lotus the man was holding in his hand, would make the man tell her such things so frankly. Shi Zhanchen narrowed his eyes as he shot her a glance. Ha, I do not know why I am even telling a young lass that I have never known before all this. Have I met you before? Qin Yu did not know what to say. They have met indeed. But your mind was clouded and unclear at that time, so you couldn't possibly be able to remember who you met back then. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After having walked for a good while, seeing that Shi Zhanchen did not say anything to try to chase her away, it seemed like he had silently consented to allowing Qin Yu to continue to follow him. But the thought in Qin Yu's mind was telling herself that the reason this fella did not feel any aversion towards her was probably because of the snake tribe's blood in his body. As the original form of the weapon spirit in her own body was the king of snakes, the great rhino golden python itself, that must be why he feels close to her. That must be it. Otherwise, if he knew that she was doing this because she wanted to swipe the sacred Buddha palm lotus from his hands, he will probably end her life with a single stroke of his sword. As for that other fella Little Bay, he has always been quick-witted and nimble-minded, so nothing should happen to him for a good while. She has to think of a way to get her hands on the sacred Buddha palm lotus right before her eyes first. Chapter 192. 1. He's so simple that she feels rather guilty. It has already been half a day since Qin Yu went missing and Mu Lai had always been highly concerned about her. After she came to know that she went to the Forbidden Grounds, she had flown to the Soul Cultivators Department to throw a big fit. Boom! The Soul Cultivators Department's classroom was so recklessly wrecked by the willful demoness and someone could no longer endure it any longer but spoke up to say, "You're being too much. We did not force her to go into the Forbidden Grounds but she went there on her own accord. You're being so unreasonable." The last syllable of the word unreasonable had not even been spoken when Mu Lai's face turned dark, the snake whip at her hip already lashing out with a whiz straight towards the person who spoke. The person quickly dodged but was still struck on the sleeve, the arm feeling a throbbing pain. Before he could even kick up a fuss, he saw the terrifyingly icy cold expression on the woman's face as she came walking closer one step at a time, her voice without the slightest temperature as she said, "Do you think that no one knows about all the things you did? Let me tell you this now. If Qin Yu comes to any harm inside the Forbidden Grounds, it will not be enough for all of you even if you have 10 lives. Who do you think you are? You think we're to be intimidated by you?" Someone shouted indignantly. After joining the Faint Mist sect, any background identity they possessed outside was no longer of much use in here, so most of the people were hiding their identities. Hence, Mu Lai's identity as the Elixir Cultivators clan's young lord was naturally not known to anyone in the Faint Mist sect. She was merely seen to be a greatly talented elixir cultivator who came from a common average family. Hearing those words, Mu Lai's lips stiffened and she gazed at the person like she was looking at a dead person. Whether all of you are intimidated or not does not matter. What matters is that I, Mu Lai, have never been one prone to lies. Since you people are courting death, I would not mind helping the Faint Mist sect to get rid of a few despicable scum, and consider it as doing a good deed. Mu Lai. That person was a little stunned as he stood with his eyes wide. You are the Lady Demoness of the Elixir Cultivators clan Mu Lai. Could it really be so coincidental? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. That woman whom it was said to possess stronger fighting prowess than many men, unparalleled skill in medicine, a dual cultivator of medicine and martial arts, her skills equally great in both areas of cultivation, known as the most outstanding talent of the Elixir Cultivators clan. The most important point was that she was also the Elixir Cultivators clan's young lord. With such a vast and immense clan behind her, she was not someone anyone could afford to offend carelessly. Throughout the lands, the last person anyone should offend would be an elixir cultivator, as no one could possibly guarantee that they would never ever get injured or fall ill. At those times, good relations with elixir cultivators would be most useful to have. Even though there might be many more elixir cultivators than one could count in that profession, but they were all still greatly respected and revered by people. Chapter 192. 2. He's so simple that she feels rather guilty. The Mu family was the Constellation Land's biggest elixir cultivator family clan and a great number of accomplished disciples from many different sects and clans who finished their training would go join the Mu family clan in order to earn a living. It could be said that as long as the Mu family wished to, they could easily sever any elixir cultivator's livelihood throughout the entire lands. The status and power they wield easy to see. And standing right before them, was the young lord who would in future come to hold the reins that controlled the entire elixir cultivators clan, and they have actually offended her. Upon realizing that, everyone's face drained of color and immediately became quiet as a mouse. Till Ming Yi and Ming Jing came in after hearing the commotion. Everyone then heaved a sigh of relief like they had just seen their savior. The events that have happened were already made known to them. After being infuriated by the stupidity of these people in their soul cultivators department, they were also feeling very guilty and anxious as well. Ming Yi held Mu Lai's arm and said comfortingly, "Mu Lai, don't get so agitated yet. Qin Yu is so highly skilled and she's so intelligent. She will definitely be fine." The expression on Mu Lai's face did not soften as she silently pulled her arm away. Her face was expressionless as she said, "Would naturally know that she is highly skilled. She has always presented herself to be so strong and it seems as if nothing will be able to defeat her. But she is after all just a young 15-year-old lass, and with all the many treacherous dangers in those forbidden grounds, how could she possibly be able to handle it all by herself?" She clearly knew that this matter had nothing to do with Ming Yi and her elder brother, but they were still members of the Soul Cultivators Department. She was unable to get over herself at that very moment. After saying that, she did not remain there long but just turned around to walk out from there. Ming Yi quickly went on to ask her, "Where are you going?" "I am going to see the sect leader, to ask him to open the way into the forbidden grounds for me. I am going in to save Qin Yu. The sect leader will never agree to that. The forbidden grounds have never once been opened for anyone for so many years, because it is so dangerous in there. You will not stand much of a chance in there yourself." Ming Jing's voice was indifferent as he said that. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Mu Lai's steps halted, and it almost sounded like she laughed scoffingly. "So what if he does not agree to it? I'll just barge my way in there. No one had ever been able to stop me from what I want to do. Moreover, if anything happens to Qin Yu in the Faint Mist sect, I wonder what kind of trouble might come to befall onto the Faint Mist sect. Not to mention how highly concerned one of the top pugilists of these lands, the Duke of Vast Seas, was towards Qin Yu. There was also that unfathomably profound violet-eyed man. Just his majestic demeanor alone told that he was definitely no ordinary man. Her initial guess about the man was that he was not from this realm. Which one between those two men was not an entity able to stir up a tempestuous storm with a single flip of their hand? To take down the Faint Mist sect would merely be a matter of lifting a single finger. So her actions would actually save the Faint Mist sect. It would be good if they choose to cooperate. If they refuse, then there was nothing she could do about it. And the lightning blaze unicorn that had been sent here into the Faint Mist sect as a spy by Jun Yao had immediately snuck his way into the forbidden grounds when he came to know that Qin Yu had gone in there. As a level 12 high-grade spirit beast, that was already a highly dominant level in this low-leveled lands, the other beasts scattering wherever he was, reigning high above all. Chapter 192. 3. He's so simple that she feels rather guilty. Needless to mention a single demon beast on the entire journey for Qin Yu and Zhan Chen, they did not even see a single bird in the trees. She was still thinking it rather strange, not knowing that all the beasts have been sent running away to hide from the lightning blaze unicorn's commanding presence. It's rather strange that I actually encountered a whole wave of demon beasts when I came in here, but there isn't even a shadow of a single spirit beast around now. Zhan Chen curved up the ends of his lips to say, seemingly rather puzzled. Qin Yu raised an eyebrow and looked at him. "When did you come in here?" 3 days ago. Zhan Chen replied. Qin Yu was a little bewildered. Why have you remained in here for so long? The sacred Buddha palm lotus only bloomed last night. I keep watch for 2 days in there, and only picked it after it fully matured this morning. Shi Zhanchen lifted the package in his hand as he said, like he was not guarding against her at all. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with a glint. Aren't you an assassin? Why would you accept a mission like this? An assassin's mission does not always require one to kill a person. Shi Zhanchen replied with a smile. The man was just too good-looking, and when his aura was restrained, it was impossible to tell that he was really an assassin at all. Moreover, he did not give off the sharp and severe murderous aura like most assassins did, nor was his face frighteningly fiendish, but instead had a mesmerizing pair of eyes. I heard that you rarely accept any missions, so I can't help but wonder how much is the offered remuneration for your services this time. Qin Yu asked with interest showing on her face. Since the sacred Buddha palm lotus is so hard to get, the price would not come cheap. But Shi Zhanchen merely shook his head to reply, I am just returning someone a favor this time, and am not on a mission. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu curved up the corners of her lips and said with an eyebrow arched up, isn't this too big a favor that you're repaying this time? The sacred Buddha palm lotus is ranked 4th on the chart for the rarest and most precious treasures, and the commission being paid out in the market for anyone who is able to bring one back is at least 1 million, with an additional 1 million if it's brought back in perfect condition. But here you are with absolutely no benefit to yourself, and getting yourself pursued by groups of killers, and going without sleep for 2 days and 2 nights in order to pick the flower when it's at its most perfect condition, even getting injured in the process. This transaction is disadvantageous to you no matter how you look at it. Have you actually lost your mind? The expression on Shi Zhanchen's face became rather surprised. How did you know all this? I am an elixir cultivator, and I would naturally know a thing or two about rare herbs and its like. Qin Yu went on to explain, as her gaze fell to look at the hand holding the package. The petals of the sacred Buddha palm lotus are filled with fine barbs, and you must have failed to notice that when you scraped your hand. Since it absorbed your blood, it would now be more beautiful looking, and its medicinal effects have become even stronger. Why? Shi Zhanchen asked in incomprehension. The sacred Buddha palm lotus is a divine herb with miraculous effects. Because it is essentially a devilish flower, it innately has a thirst for blood. Very few people know this, but only when it has drunk fresh blood after it has fully bloomed, would it then become a true sacred Buddha palm lotus. Inversely, without fresh blood, even if it has fully matured, its medicinal effects would not be as miraculous. Chapter 192. 4. He's so simple that she feels rather guilty, I see. Shi Zhanchen understood and then curled up the ends of his lips. I had not thought that my blood would benefit this thing here. However, Qin Yu shook her head and looked at him out of the corner of her eye. That thing is demonic and it sucked your blood. Do you feel that there's anything wrong with your body? No. Shi Zhanchen answered. Unique bloodline indeed. And that is why he is completely unaffected. Qin Yu was speechless for a moment. She considered the situation and then went on to say, be a little more careful even if you feel fine. The sacred Buddha palm lotus is poisonous, and as you touched it, the effects might manifest later after some time, though you do not feel anything now. Shi Zhanchen stared in bewilderment at the white porcelain bottle that had been forcibly stuffed in his hand, unable to react for a moment. To be ingested, once a day. It will prevent any sudden symptoms of poisoning. His eyes did not turn away from the tiny delicate little bottle for a long while, and a glint flashed very fleetingly in his eyes for a very brief moment. His beautiful crimson phoenix eyes then filled with a gentle smile, and his voice was clear and soothing as he spoke, like the slow trickling of a stream, very comforting to hear. Thank you. This is the first time someone is being so concerned about me. The pair of eyes looked at her with a tinge of earnestness in them, and Qin Yu was suddenly feeling a little guilty when her eyes met his. She was merely trying to get a little closer to him, so that he would let down his guard against her, that will then allow her to succeed in swiping the sacred Buddha palm lotus right out of his hands. What's this about care and concern? It is all merely part of a sneaky scheme. Do you have to take it so seriously? That would only make her feel even more guilty. And how could a divine and godly level assassin have a personality that was so innocently naive? She immediately felt as if she was committing a most evil and nefarious travesty. But the sacred Buddha palm lotus was something that she must get her hands on no matter what. To piece her mother's fragmented soul back together, she needs this herb, the sacred Buddha palm lotus. So, by whatever means possible, it wouldn't matter even if she has to pull a little trick. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. She was the one who saved this fella's life anyway, and she had not received a single cent in repayment. So, she is merely taking one single herb from him, which is more than a bargain for him. That's absolutely right. Jun Yao then felt the little bit of guilt she was feeling suddenly dissolve into nothing. TSK. The greatest assassin is indeed different from others, always a beautiful lady accompanying him. But the lady this time is a different one and is even more beautiful than the previous one. What great luck with women you have. As the evil and malevolent voice rang out, several people had suddenly appeared in front of them without a sound. One of them was a towering burly brute, his eyes measuring Jun Yao head to toe with fiery fervor, like he was gauging up a succulent and fatty piece of meat. Jun Yao's lips stiffened up, and before she had even said a word, the man beside her shifted his body slightly, innocuously blocking her from the people who had appeared so suddenly. Chapter 193. 1. Was he flirting with her? Jun Yao's eyes flashed with a glint, seemingly a little moved by the gesture. Shi Zhanchen looked at the towering man expressionlessly, his voice tinged with a barely perceptible sliver of murder. Keep that gaze of yours away. The man tilted his head back and laughed highly arrogantly, and he turned his eyes to fix upon the attractive figure of the young lady with an exquisitely beautiful face, even going on to boorishly lick his lips with his tongue, his face lascivious like he would like nothing more than to rip off all her clothes. Shi Zhanchen, if you know what's good for you, then leave that thing you are carrying in your hand and the woman behind. We can make this very easy for you. The man's tone was arrogant, like he really thought nothing of this man who was the subject of legends. The corners of Shi Zhanchen's lips curled up, a highly dazzling arc. He had never been seen to smile like that, but even though that was the case, the grave and sinister aura surrounding his body did not reduce in the slightest, sending chills to run up one's spine unconsciously. The oppressive aura of a divine great assassin was not something that anyone was able to resist against. The mirth on the face of the man who had been so arrogant a moment ago suddenly stiffened up, and he then let out a pitiful cry as he clamped his hands right over his eyes, where bright red blood began to flow out through the gaps between his fingers. And right at his feet, rolled two grisly highly bloodied eyeballs on the ground, covered in a layer of dust and soil. RRGH Shi Zhanchen. I am going to have your life for this. The excruciating pain from having lost his eyes threw the man into a maniacal frenzy, the blood flowing incessantly down his face, his eye sockets just two black holes, a frightening sight to behold. The expression on Shi Zhanchen's face was unaffected. I did warn you to keep your eyes away. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao was completely blocked by the man's tall figure right in front of her, and the towering man really was not able to see all that much of the young lady anymore, but that nauseating gaze of his had made Shi Zhanchen very uncomfortable. And once he was discomfited, he would naturally make the offender see blood, or rather not see anything in this case. His actions here was clearly taunting, and when all the other men saw their comrade suffered such a grievous injury, rage flared up from within. Shi Zhanchen. You've gone too far and we will make you pay for it with your life here today. These few people were all highly vicious and merciless felons, and they were here seeking the high commission offered for the sacred Buddha palm lotus, people who did not fear death. To be able to hold their own in these lands for so many years, they were naturally people of some ability. Compared to the bunch of assassins who appeared previously, these men were prepared to lay down their lives for what they sought, and would be a troublesome group. They did not believe that the man before their eyes would be as profound and unfathomable as the legends say he was, thinking they were just merely exaggerated rumors, so they were feeling a lot more confident than they should. Chapter 193. 2. Was he flirting with her on the outside? Shi Zhanchen merely looked to be a more beautiful version of another regular weak scholarly man, who did not carry the sharp and severe demeanor that one would be able to see in a merciless assassin with just one look, nor did he have a malevolent and villainous-looking face. Such a highly deceiving-looking face was however usually the first reason men like them would end up losing their lives. Before them, the bodies of the burly-looking men who looked incredibly strong then started to change, their movements in unison, like they were executing the same martial arts form, imbued with thunderous force, unstoppable in its power. An enormous fist took form high up in the sky, and if it were to smash down, not to mention a human being, it would even smash a hole through hard steel. Qin Yu looked up at the fist overhead, an eyebrow rising up with interest. I had not thought that these guys would actually possess some abilities. But their martial arts technique only has form but no soul. That weakens its power by a whole lot. You're well versed in martial arts as well? Shi Zhanchen asked, looking at the young lady with a smile. Qin Yu tilted her head back coyly. I know a little. The man's eyes were gentle as he said, do you want to see the sword I have? Qin Yu blinked her eyes. Can I? Shi Zhanchen, the greatest assassin of legend, was the fastest sword under the heavens. Against his enemies, they would not even able to see the shadow of his sword before they came to breathe their last. Hence, it was known to be one of the most mysterious weapons throughout the lands. The gigantic fist filled with immense dangers hung threateningly close, but the two of them were still chatting there like there was no one else around. Just as the group of men intensified their powers to send the massive fist crashing down, they suddenly heard the soft whistling sound of wind right by their ears. Sound of the wind? No. That's not the wind, it's the chi from a sword. But it was already too late by the time they came to react. The rock-solid fist form in the air suddenly looked like it was torn to shreds by a ferocious beast, turning into mist as it dissipated into the air. The tongue-tied men stared with wide-eyed astoundment, and a line of blood then came to appear running right down the middle of their forehead to their chin, before their bodies crumpled to the ground, all of them dead and unmoving. Qin Yu's eyes blinked in surprise, and then blinked again, unable to believe her own eyes. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, She had not seen how Shi Zhanchen made his move at all. What kind of a freak is this man? His powers are just too heaven-defying. The name as the fastest sword throughout the lands was truly justified and well-deserved. Seeing the myriad changes in the expressions she showed on her face, Shi Zhanchen could not help but laugh softly. He then stretched out a long slender arm, and a jet-black long sword with mysterious and intricate carvings suddenly appeared in his hand. At the top of the sword's hilt was the head of a snake spitting its forked tongue, its lifelike eyes two shiny black obsidian stones, looking almost like it was alive. Chapter 193. 3. Was he flirting with her? The man then stretched his thumb out to push the sword's hilt up a little. The instant the sword came out from its sheath, a sharp icy glint flashed out, stirring up the hair on Qin Yu's shoulder to flutter slightly. Qin Yu's eyes lit up, and she could not help but exclaim in praise, truly a great sword. Shi Zhanchen smiled and pushed the sword back into its sheath before he said, this sword's name is called Evil's Dazzle, a demonic sword from a highly ancient period that took an almighty entity 300 years to craft with power from the dark abyss, after devouring tens of thousands of living souls. Qin Yu could not help but knit her brows together. An evil sword? Why then are you? All weapons and artifacts that could be termed as an evil artifact would have its own spirit. If one was unable to truly control the artifact spirit, the person's body would come to suffer grievous harm, his life essence sucked away by the evil spirit, till he dies completely drained out. Shi Zhanchen saw the puzzlement on her face and he brought the evil's dazzle closer to her. Do you want to touch it? I can. Qin Yu became even more surprised. Once a spiritual artifact attains a spirit, it does not allow anyone to violate it easily. Besides its owner, no one else can touch it. And this person is letting her touch his weapon. Seeing Qin Yu hesitate, Shi Zhanchen went on to put evil's dazzle straight into her hand. She almost wanted to toss the sword out of her hands by reflex, but she came to discover there she was feeling perfectly fine. Shi Zhanchen laughed, and then explained to her, you only need to completely tame it, and it will do what you want it to do. You can completely tame an artifact spirit? Qin Yu asked disbelievingly. One will know just by seeing how her own weapon spirit had run away from home. If one sought to have such proud beings like them to submit themselves completely to a human, that would only be possible if it was done through a master-servant contract, placing them at an absolute disadvantageous position. You only need to beat them till they submit obediently. Shi Zhanchen said nonchalantly. When it first came to attain its spirit, it audaciously sought to take over my body by hiding itself inside, but was discovered in the end. I bashed it up till its spirit almost scattered and dissipated. Ever since then, it has been completely docile and obedient. That entire process was believed that it would have been too brutal to see. She was really still too gentle. You must be a disciple of the Faint Mist sect, right? It is said that these are forbidden grounds and disciples would be punished for trespassing in here. Shi Zhanchen suddenly looked like he remembered something and he opened his mouth to say after a long while. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU speaking about that, Qin Yu's brows creased up and she let out a low curse, damn it, I almost forgot all about little Bei. Seeing her look a little perplexed, Shi Zhanchen subconsciously asked with concern, what's wrong? It's all because of the three great sex friendship meet. My younger brother managed to get a spot as a participant which made people jealous, so they used despicable means to try to force him to give up his spot, and I do not know which corner of this place he is in now. Qin Yu said helplessly as she covered her forehand with her hand. Hearing that, Shi Zhanchen's lips curved up in a smile. I had thought how great the Faint Mist sect really was, said to be paradise on earth, like an immortal's realm. So they are just a bunch of shallow fame-seeking miscreants. Chapter 193. 4. Was he flirting with her? Don't fret. I'll look for him with you. Shi Zhanchen said as he patted her reassuringly on the shoulder. He could have just left the place after getting the sacred Buddha palm lotus and Feng Qi was waiting outside with the others for him, but he had unexpectedly met this young lady. He was thinking that he might have been poisoned in some way. To think that he did not really want to leave so quickly, or rather, he didn't want to be unable to see her. In the place where his heart was, he felt a kind of stirring that he had never felt before. He really felt as if he had met her somewhere before, so he was not guarded against the young lady, but was instead highly trusting. If Feng Qi and the others knew that he would one day have emotions rise up in him like this, they would all definitely think that he had been possessed. Humph. Really wonder what kind of a prestigious background that Qin Yu holds, where even the sect leader himself would think that she is so important that he made everyone come in here with such great fanfare just to look for her. Is it just because she is a prodigious all-element wielder? Stop complaining already. The sect leader ordered that she must be found before nightfall today. The young lady with great hearing accidentally heard the debating voices up ahead and her eyes flashed with a glint. She then said to the man beside her, let's go. We'll avoid those people first. They seem to be looking for you. Aren't you going out to meet them? Shi Zhanchen asked in surprise. Ha! These forbidden grounds are not easy to traverse, and I would not want to be moving together with them as they would just drag me down by having to save them. Qin Yu answered, her face expressionless. After seeing what those scoundrels in the Soul Cultivators department did, she no longer had such a good impression of the Faint Mist sect as a whole. Once she had gathered all her mother's soul fragments, she would not continue to remain in this place with such a toxic atmosphere. Seeing her cold and unfeeling little face, Shi Zhanchen could not help but laugh. Your character is really rather cold-hearted? Qin Yu queried with a sidelong glance directed towards the man. The man however went on to shake his head, his voice gentle as he replied, adorable. Why does she feel like he is flirting with her? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU curled up tightly in a tiny coal-colored ball and trying to diminish its presence to the lowest, the tiny ball of coal secretly nudged Qin Yu's arm lightly, silently indicating that the man was indeed flirting with mother, and that she must not be deceived by his looks. Meatball already has a father and you must not explore the birds and the bees behind father's back. Meatball was able to directly communicate with Qin Yu's spirit consciousness, and after she heard what the little ball of coal said, Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before she asked in bewilderment. When did you come to have a father? Doesn't mother remember? You previously pushed father down on the bed and even kissed him. How can you be so irresponsible? Meatball's mushy-sounding voice rose up in complaint. Damn it. Is this little furball talking about Jun Yao? That was just one big misunderstanding, all right. And she can explain it all. Chapter 194. 1. When it rains, it's a torrential downpour. There was only 1 day left to the 3 great sex friendship meet and the sun was already hanging low over the western horizon with nightfall imminent. Everyone who had been searching in the forbidden grounds for the entire day were gathered together to reorganize themselves. Where do you think that lass could possibly be? How could we possibly not have found a single trace of her? Su Liemo was leaning back against a tree, his handsome-looking face grave. Luo Lanji narrowed his eyes and then said in a soft voice, did you notice that many unfamiliar auras have appeared within these forbidden grounds? The expression on Su Liemo's face looked a little startled and he then recollected himself. Are you saying that someone has broken his way in? That is not possible. You should know very well how freakishly strong those 3 fellas guarding the place are. Just one of them alone will be a headache enough for anyone, not to mention the 3 of them joining forces. Even our chief might not be able to do anything about it. How could anyone possibly be able to shake them off and sneak their way in? There is a possibility for any situation, and not just that, the demonic air in these forbidden grounds has become more savage. Luo Lanji gazed thoughtfully into the distance ahead and then said, I fear that the secret kept in these forbidden grounds will not remain hidden much longer. On the other side of the grounds, Qing Bei and the cohort of people encountered all sorts of danger, but they managed to get out from them unscathed. After Qing Bei helped them escape danger several times, that group of people have come to trust him very much. Because Qing Bei had been able to predict the dangers before they happened, such an amazing ability must be fully utilized. The scar-faced leader of the group then said to Qing Bei, little brother, are you able to foresee who the person that took the sacred Buddha palm lotus is? Having come such a long way with these people, Qing Bei had naturally known their objective. They had come here to snatch a particular precious treasure from these forbidden grounds. The sacred Buddha palm lotus had the miraculous ability to revive the dead and reconverge one's soul. Coincidentally, it happened that the precious bloom was supposed to mature in these couple of days, and it was not known how people came to know that the sacred Buddha palm lotus was hidden here in the faint mist sect. Once the news leaked out, it drew many covetous eyes to the place. It was said that some high entity had offered a high reward in gold, that if anyone was able to deliver the sacred Buddha palm lotus in a pristine condition before him, he would give that person 10 million, even though the market offered rate was merely 2 million. At such a sky-high price, how could people not be enticed? Especially people of the tumultuous pugilist world who lived by the edge of their sword in constant strife, where they would need money the most, all started coming here in droves. And this group of people was just one among many. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU hearing that, an image then suddenly flashed in Qing Bei's mind, which caused his eyes to flare wide. It's Qing Yu. Why has she come in here as well? She must have come to look for him after discovering that he had gone missing, and that is why she is here. But this place is really just too dangerous. Chapter 194. 2. When it rains, it's a torrential downpour. Even though he was unable to describe that feeling, but throughout the journey, he just had this feeling of unease, wherein here there was something really terrifying. This will not do. He must quickly find Jun Yao. Although she is highly skilled and hold quite a few trump cards, she is however unable to foresee the danger in here. He can only feel at ease when he is together with her. He only had Jun Yao now, who has always been protecting him. But now, he has to also at least try to protect her with whatever weak powers he has. And right at that moment, in a certain place within the forbidden grounds, something had spawned and was spreading soundlessly, stirring malevolently, seeming like it was about to break free from its shackles inside the deep abyss. White Fun lands, in the Feng family. Young master, an esteemed guest came to visit and the family head has requested for your presence. Soft knocking was heard from outside the door, and a servant's voice rang out respectfully. Young master. Are you in there, young master? There was no response from inside and the person outside the door hesitated for a moment before he reached his hand out slowly, thinking to push the door open. But before he could even touch the door, an ink-black shadow suddenly struck him on his arm, and he felt an agonizing pain like his arm had been torn off by a ferocious beast. The servant's face turned pale and he fell to the ground in agony. It was probably much too painful for him to even cry out. Still not going to get lost? What sounded next was a man's low enchanting voice. I've said that I do not like anyone coming into my room, and if you're deaf, I can help clean out your ears for you next time. Heh, what about washing them out with blood? All color drained out from the servant's face and he cowed out his head soundly hard on the ground as he said, Your lowly servant knows his mistake already. I beg for the young master to forgive me. It was said that the Feng family's second young master was weak and timid, highly mediocre and incompetent. But who would have known that after the young master fell off a horse in an accident a few years ago, he had completely changed as a person. Hidden beneath his genteel and refined looks, was actually cruelty and bloodthirstiness, where no one in the Feng family dared to go against him. Even the first young master was now completely deferential to the second young master and he became highly valued by the family head. Anyone who offended him have never come to a good end, where dying without their body intact would be considered a light punishment. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. But today, it seemed like he was in a rather good mood. The servant trembled in fear for a while and then heard the man open his mouth to say, Scram. I will be there in a while. Has he been spared? The servant felt as if he had cheated death and he went on to strike his head hard on the ground a couple more times in kowtow before saying, Thank you, second young master. Your servant shall take his leave. He then quickly departed from the courtyard that no one wanted to ask about in a hurried haste. The most terrifying task in the Feng family was to go deliver messages to the second master's place, as the slightest misstep could easily cost them their lives. Chapter 194. 3. When it rains, it's a torrential downpour in the room. Behind heavy layers of curtains, the tall and slender figure of a man could be faintly seen lounging back on the bed, wearing only a thin white inner robe that hung loosely on his body, which came to reveal a strong muscular chest, devastatingly beautiful. Upon that gracefully handsome and soul-stirringly good-looking countenance, a gorgeous arc slowly rose, the light of a million sparkling stars filling up his radiantly brilliant eyes. Ching, you are also springing such surprises on me. To think that you will turn up there in that place. The man laughed softly, the expression on his face doting and tender. But I firmly believe that you will walk out from that alive. After all, you are the girl destined for me. Only you who hold such power can stand by my side, to truly become my woman. What's wrong? Shi Zhanchen looked at the young lady whose steps had suddenly halted and asked in puzzlement. It was for just an instant that Qin Yu felt a sense of hair-raising terror. Her heart had stopped for that one instant, and it had felt so oppressive she found herself unable to breathe. And where had that feeling come from out of the blue? She really did not have the slightest idea. If only little Bei was around, maybe he would be able to provide some clues. Qin Yu. Seeing her not saying a word and in a daze, Shi Zhanchen could not help but call out to her one more time. It was only then that Qin Yu managed to come back to her senses and turn around to look at him to ask in a soft voice, "Did you feel that?" "What?" Shi Zhanchen was confused. Qin Yu did not say anything. Since he did not feel anything, it looks like that feeling was directed only at her alone. "Shi Zhanchen, do you know the way out?" "Yes, I do. But aren't you trying to find a person?" Shi Zhanchen thought that she wanted to leave the place, and could not help feeling surprised. Qin Yu nodded and replied, "I am trying to find my younger brother, but I do not want to trouble you too much, so maybe you should leave first." "I'll be fine on my own." Shi Zhanchen knitted his brows. "I do not find it to be any trouble. Moreover, it is not safe for you alone. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Don't you have to bring the sacred Buddha palm lotus out from here? You spent a few days waiting for it to mature and bloom, and I would think that it's something very important." "I'm in no hurry." Shi Zhanchen went on to interrupt her words. He narrowed his eyes and then said, "What's wrong? You're acting a little strange." She had suddenly stopped and seemed to realize something. But why? Does she not want to tell him and is now telling him to leave? Qin Yu was feeling a little helpless. This fella is being quite stubborn and it looks like he has decided that he's not leaving. The key thing here is what reason can she give to make him leave? Although she was rather keen on getting her hands on that sacred Buddha palm lotus, she did not want to drag the innocent into this. The man might be an assassin, but he was an exceptionally kind one, all the more reason he should not end up being buried in this place. Chapter 194. 4. When it rains, it's a torrential downpour, but this time, even she herself was feeling a little flustered, fearful that she might not be able to get out of this unscathed. "Shi Zhanchen, listen to me. We're merely strangers who recently became acquainted by chance, and as the greatest assassin, you should probably be rather temperamental, and wouldn't like to get yourself dragged into other people's business." Qin Yu said unfeelingly, her tone a little forceful. But how could Shi Zhanchen not know that she was just trying to anger him, and was trying to make him leave on his own accord? "You do not have to worry about that. I will not be leaving unless it's together." His attitude was resolute. "You." Qin Yu was almost about to explode with anger, but just at that moment, the mirthful voice of a man sounded out lazily, "Little fox." Qin Yu was startled and it was only till the voice called out to her again that she was able to react. She pulled out the small and exquisite little purple crystal ball from her hip and what met her eyes was the man's handsome face that seemed to have been crafted by the hands of the gods. It had been at least 20 days since Jun Yao left for Cloud Heaven, and having not seen her for quite a long while, he had started to miss her a little. An idea then came to him and he came to use the communication crystal ball, which would allow him to see whether the little fox had lost any weight recently. With this one look, he discovered that she did not seem to be in the faint mist sect, as the surroundings of the place she was in looked highly unfamiliar. "Where are you?" Jun Yao asked in bewilderment. Qin Yu then answered, "This is the faint mist sect's forbidden grounds." Jun Yao was slightly taken aback a moment before he went on to say, "Why would you go there? Did you encounter any danger? You'd better get out of there quick as the place feels a little evil. I do not know what kind of evil creature is kept in there and you would not be able to handle it on your own." Qin Yu sighed, and said a little gloomily, "It's a long story, and I seem to have run into something that's a little troublesome right now. I don't know whether I have come to wake something up but a chill feeling is running down my back and it seems like I cannot walk away from it." That's right, unable to walk. Hence she had asked Shi Zhanchen to leave. Something must have locked her in somehow, and that was why she had suddenly stopped walking just now, as she was unable to take another step forward. Jun Yao's brows furrowed up. The lightning blaze unicorn should have followed you in, and he will find you very soon. Wait for me to come over and do not disconnect the communication device yet. The young lady on the other end nodded her head, and it looked like she was going to say something when a thick fog suddenly rose up inside the crystal ball that blurred out everything, making it impossible for him to see at all. Jun Yao's face immediately turned dark and his voice rose in pitch. "Little fox, are you all right?" There was no response from the other side. Even their voices could no longer be heard. Jun Yao's fists clenched up tightly and the air around him surged turbulently. "My lord, you just got back and your injuries from before still have not fully recovered. You cannot take on another journey. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." EU standing guard on one side, Yuji's voice rang out persuasively. But the moment she lifted her head up to look at the man who was supposed to be seated high up on the primary seat, she found it already empty. At that speed, he had probably torn open a dimensional portal to go straight into the lower realm. Yuji could not help but creased her brows together. Chapter 195. 1. Don't be afraid, it's all right now, the Lord. Seems to be a little much too concerned about that young lady. As the Lord of the Dark Lands, the king of a region in Cloud Heaven, that was not something great for a man like him. The azure blue sky that had been free of clouds as far as the sky could see suddenly saw a hurricane stir, and thick roiling clouds dark as ink suddenly gathered and formed, an oppressively dark and suffocating air descended. PFFF, the pale-faced young lady suddenly vomited out a mouthful of blood. Mother! Meatball quickly came scuttling out from within Qin Yu's sleeve and could no longer be bothered to hide the secret that it was actually capable of human speech as it looked at Qin Yi worriedly. What's wrong, mother? Where are you hurt? Shi Zhanchen held up the young lady who had nearly fallen to the ground with one arm and asked with furrowed brows. What happened? He was feeling perfectly fine here, but the young lady had suddenly looked like she suffered a severe hit, her face drained of all color. Qin Yu knitted her brows and with a grunt, she slowly pushed her own body up to stand up, disbelief in her eyes as she looked at the thickening mass secretly congealing. How could this thing appear here? That was the very bane of her purest bloodline, a dark zombie that was an accumulated mass of boundless devilry, a creature of the greatest evil. To think that the place that was like an immortal's paradise in the faint mist sect would have such an evil being within. Looks like she would lose her life here today, as the food the dark zombie loved to eat the most were live humans who possessed the purest bloodline. With a deathly pale face that was without the slightest shade of blood, Qin Yu gripped the man's arm tightly and said, pausing at every word, Shi Zhanchen, leave at once. Although the dark zombie would not cause all that much harm to him, but this was after all a creature of evil, so remaining in contact for too long with it might harm one's body in some way or another. But how could Shi Zhanchen possibly come to abandon her in that situation? They might have just come to know each other for less than one day, but affinity works in such strange and mysterious ways as this young lady moved his heart somehow. Which made it impossible for him to leave her behind without doing anything about it. Though the enemy seemed like it would be rather troublesome to deal with, but the instant he saw her vomit out blood, Shi Zhanchen immediately felt murder rise up inside his chest. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, that thing there has injured her. The man slowly raised the sword in his hand. The moment evil's dazzle was unsheathed, the swirling dark clouds in the sky grew more turbulent. The powerful sword's aura condensed together to assume physical form, hurling thousands of ferocious sword slashes that shot at lightning speed straight towards the ever-transforming mist. If that was just any regular creature, it would definitely be shredded till there was no bones left, its soul scattered into the wind. But this was the dark zombie, the most evil of beings, where any regular attacks would not have any effect on it. And after the sword aura slashes sliced into it, the black misty mass actually expanded in size, and Shi Zhanchen fell back a couple of steps, his aura becoming a little unsteady. Chapter 195. 2. Don't be afraid, it's alright now. That thing had actually devoured his power slashes. The evil's dazzle is a sword of evil, so its powers would only provide nourishment to that evil creature. Don't waste any more of your strength. Qin Yu's voice was a little weak as she told him that. Shi Zhanchen's face turned grave. Is there no way to fight it? Qin Yu shook her head with a bitter smile. The dark zombie does not possess its own consciousness and is not any kind of living being, but something out of this world. There is no way of going against it, and it is unstoppable. She had not thought that the thing she had never once encountered throughout her 20-over years in her previous life would appear before her in this life after being reborn. But wanting to her to give up just like that was never her style of doing things. Even if she had to die, she would destroy this thing as well. Qin Yu lifted a hand to wipe at the blood from the corner of her mouth, before her hands then formed an elaborate seal before her chest to summon a spell. Her sharp nails gouged into her palms and the bright red blood filled up the seal mark suspended in the air before her, flowing within the intricate swirls, beautiful and mesmerizing. Qin Yu, what are you doing? Shi Zhanchen could sense that after she conducted the ritual, her aura had further weakened by a considerable amount. The dark zombie had appeared purely because of my purest bloodline. Only by eating me up, would it then stop. Otherwise, it would just go on to devour all living things here in the Forbidden Grounds. Neither of these two results are desirable to me, and I have no choice but to fight it with everything I've got. The smile on Qin Yu's face looked a little forced, and the only thing she could do was to pray that Jun Yao has a way of dealing with it. Shi Zhanchen walked over closer to her and opened his mouth to ask. Can I help? Qin Yu shook her head once again. This is something you are really not able to help me with. I asked you to leave just now and you refused. Don't you regret that now? Shi Zhanchen knew that she was saying that only to make him feel better, and the tense expression on his face did not let up in the slightest. The mist engulfed by darkness was slowly coming to reveal its real form as time passed. It was an enormous being that was a good 10 feet tall, its body a humanoid shape, but its head was one of a malevolent wild beast. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The was the dark zombie's true form. It was originally just a mass of evil aura that existed in chaos, and changed and evolved over thousands of millenniums, to reach such a level of attainment, and have become the incredibly powerful dark zombie. It cannot speak, but just an instinctive awareness, its scarlet red eyes looking down longingly at the human who possessed the sweetest and most delectable blood, and it just could not help wanting to swallow her right up. The corners of Qin Yu's lips curled up with a sliver of cold scorn. She stretched her hand out to gather the seal at the highest point above her head. Before the clumsy dark zombie could even react, she smacked the seal right onto the dark zombie's humanoid chest. The very next second, a loud blast was heard, which blew out quite a significant-sized hole in its chest. Thick black liquid then came gurgling out from the wound. The bright red blood that formed the seal immediately caused the dark zombie body to quickly fester and rot where the blood touched. Chapter 195. 3. Don't be afraid, it's alright now. The dark zombie let out a deafening roar. It had not thought that the human before it would come to treat it like that. It was the first time that he encountered such audacious food that dared to fight back. It would definitely not spare this human. The massive figure slowly lowered itself down, its malevolent skull filled with furious wrath, fully intent on tearing the slender young lady into shreds. Its mouth that was filled with a foul rotting stench opened wide, and spit out a ball of black fog. Qin Yu's eyes narrowed, and she dodged away quickly. The dense shrubbery on the ground where she was standing a moment before had become scorched black. Seeing that she had not been struck, the dark zombie's rage intensified. It stretched its two massive hands out to catch her, but maybe because of his overly large body, he seemed a little clumsy, and was naturally not as agile as the petite young lady, unable to catch her no matter how hard he tried. Seeing that, the dark zombie was mad with rage, its huge foul-smelling mouth spewing out black fog indiscriminately all over the place, and Qin Yu just continued to constantly dodge. Shi Zhanchen looked on anxiously and he said to the sword in his hand in a grave voice, "Evil's dazzle, you had better come out here right this instant. Aren't you always strong and powerful? Why are you hiding like a tortoise in its shell today?" The person he was calling out to, was the sword spirit of Evil's dazzle. Unexpectedly, his words that were dripping with sarcasm did not succeed in angering Evil's dazzle into revealing itself, but Shi Zhanchen merely came to hear its cold indifferent voice say, "Master, I would advise that you had better not be a busybody. The dark zombie is the most evil of all things and I am really nothing before that. You should not overestimate yourself and try to break a rock with an egg. The young lady will undoubtedly meet her doom today as it is not possible for anyone to still live once the dark zombie sets its mind on you. Master, I think we should leave right now." Shi Zhanchen's eyes turned chilly. "You want me to be a man who go back on his word? Master, you will only be doing what makes sense here, so how could anyone blame you for eating your words? And didn't the young lady ask you to leave as well? You are not able to help her anyway, why not? Shut up. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." Shi Zhanchen snapped icily, interrupting Evil's dazzle's words. And the terrifying aura emanating from Shi Zhanchen's entire body caused Evil's dazzle to clamp his mouth shut immediately. "Forget it then. I won't persuade him any further. His master was a person who would not change once his mind was made up. Most to most, it would just be killed together with its master." On the other side, the dark zombie just could not catch the young lady. Seeming to realize that this method was not going to work, it then changed its strategy. It opened its mouth wide, and a powerful suction force sucked Qin Yu straight towards its mouth. Caught off guard in that one instant, Qin Yu's body took a stumble, and she was uncontrollably being sucked towards the dark zombie's mouth. Shi Zhanchen grabbed onto her arm behind her, his voice strained, "Hold on tight, and do not let go." At the same time, Evil's dazzle flashed out of its sheath and dug deep into the ground, holding down the two figures. Chapter 195. 4. Don't be afraid, it's all right now, Shi Zhanchen. Let go this instant. Qin Yu had not thought that the man would actually do something so dangerous and she went on to stare at him with her beautiful eyes as she hollered at him. "This will not hold out much longer. Let go of me now. I will not let go of you. I have already released a signal and will only have to last till my people arrive. We still have a sliver of a chance of surviving this." Shi Zhanchen said as he tightened his grip on her arm, holding her like an iron clamp. The dark zombie's strength was not something the two of them were able to resist against, and Qin Yu knew that if the situation continued on like this, they would be able to last for about another half an hour at most, which would just drain their strength and they might even possibly die. About this man who was known to be the only divine great assassin throughout these lands, the only thing she knew was only through what she heard through rumors, and she had never known that he could be someone that was so kind and a man of high integrity when they have yet to have known each other even for a full day. The sky was starting to turn dark and once night descended fully, the dark zombie's powers would be at its strongest, and it would be impossible to defeat it then. Her body was already being inextricably pulled towards the dark zombie but her arm was still tightly held in a tight grip. Qin Yu narrowed her eyes and slowly raised her other hand. But the man saw through her intentions and he went on to say, "If you are really going to do that, then I will just release my hands right now." Qin Yu really wanted to cry. Why is this person being so obstinate? Does he want to die together with her so much? Shi Zhanchen, have you forgotten that you still have the Assassin's Temple under your charge? Do you still remember that you're one of the mainstays of the Carefree Valley? If you die, are you going to abandon the people there? Do you not care about them anymore? Qin Yu asked helplessly. People of the world only know that Shi Zhanchen was the greatest assassin throughout the lands, but his identity was a well-hidden secret and was only known internally by people inside the Carefree department. So how did she know that? I am actually a spy sent by the Faint Mist sect to be hidden within the Carefree Valley, so you do not have to sacrifice your own life to save me. It's not worth it. Her acting was great and it was highly realistic, but Shi Zhanchen still did not let go of her hand. Looking into her eyes, he said, pausing between every word, "No matter what you say now, I will not let go of you." The bloom just below the corner of his left eye seemed to flash faintly, and the dark zombie was then heard letting out a maniacal roar, before it spewed out a mouthful of black mist right toward Shi Zhanchen. Once that black mist touched anyone, in the best scenario, they would turn into a zombie monster, or have their bodies disintegrate into nothing if things turn out worse. Is the man crazy? What is he trying to do? Qin Yu clenched her teeth tightly together, her mind suddenly awhirl with thoughts. Any normal person touched by that black mist would have no chance of survival at all, but if it's her, there might still be a sliver of hope if she's lucky. With that thought in mind, Qin Yu had already turned herself around, her back moving to block that ball of black mist completely. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ugh. It hurt so much, like her entire back was rotting off, and it was the first time she felt such excruciating pain. Qin Yu. As her consciousness was becoming muddled and blurry, she seemed to see a familiar figure carrying her up, the low magnetic voice highly comforting. "Don't be afraid, it's all right now." And her eyes slowly closed. Chapter 196. 1. Close your eyes. Don't look at what you're not supposed to see. By Ji Yan was immediately summoned back from Cloud Heaven with a secret order by Jun Yao. Without even needing to guess, he was certain that something had happened to a certain lass, and that was why that fellow was being so frantic. Several people stood outside the tightly shut door of the room. An anxious-faced Qin Bei, a cold and solemn Mu Lai, and Shi Zhanchen, whose body was exuding a frighteningly low and oppressive aura. "Ah Zhan, what actually happened in there? Why were you in there for so long? And what was that explosion all about?" Feng Qi and the others who had recognized the signal and had rushed their way in could not help but ask worriedly when they saw the pale-faced man who looked to be in a rather wretched state. Could he have encountered some kind of danger in there? But with Ah Zhan's skills, he should have been able to deal with it. "Did you manage to get the sacred Buddha palm lotus?" Seeing that he was not saying anything, Feng Qi continued to ask. But the man still did not utter a single word. Feng Qi's brows knitted up, and was just about to ask something again when his eyes unconsciously caught sight of Mu Lai, who was leaning against the wall at the side. He was immediately surprised, and he went on to say, "Young Miss Mu, you're here as well." Mu Lai's mind had been thinking only about Qin Yu's injury inside the room and had not noticed the other group of men. When she heard someone calling out to her, she then realized that the leader of the Assassin's Temple, the top assassin Shi Zhanchen that Qin Yu and her had previously saved, was standing among the group of men. Mu Lai nodded her head slightly in greeting. "Long time no see." Feng Qi then said with a smile, "It's been a good half-year since we last met. Has young Miss Mu come to join the Faint Mist sect now? We were in such a rush to leave back then and had not properly thanked young Miss Mu for saving our lives." Mu Lai replied indifferently. "I did not help much. The person you have to thank is Qin Yu." "Is Miss Qin Yu here as well?" Feng Qi asked in surprise. Shi Zhanchen's mind was still fixed upon the scene where Qin Yu had blocked that ball of black mist for him, and she had fallen right before his eyes. Suddenly hearing her name being mentioned, he was immediately pulled back to his senses. "What are the two of you talking about?" Hearing the question, Feng Qi then explained, "Back then, Zhan, your life was hanging by a thread under the spell of the snake curse. It was this Miss Qin Yu who appeared in the nick of time to save you, or you would have been in grave danger." Shi Zhanchen's gaze turned sharp, and his body froze in its spot. So, she had been the one who saved him back then. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. When he finally came back to his senses, a fuzzy figure appeared right before his eyes. Though it was a little blurry and he could not see it all that clearly, he was able to hear the faint sound of the person's gentle voice that was tinged with smiles. No wonder he had found her somehow familiar. So they had really met before. But why did she not tell him her identity when she must have recognized him? And this was already the second time she had saved his life. And she was now lying in there, gravely injured, not knowing whether she would live or die. Chapter 196. 2. Close your eyes. Don't look at what you're not supposed to see inside the room. The slender-figured young lady's face was deathly pale, her long lashes drooping down over her cheeks. Her exquisite little face was slightly creased up in discomfort, cold sweat beading over her forehead, and her body was not moving as she lay on her side on the bed. Seeing her back, it was a sight that made one's heart involuntarily wrench up. The snow-white clothes had turned a scorched black, mixed together with blood and rotting flesh, an absolutely grisly sight. She was not able to lie flat on her back at all, because the wound on her back was really just too grievous, clear that it would be too painful without needing to give that a single thought. Bai Zhiyan's brows were furrowed together, a little lost. The size of the wound was rather large, and if he were to cut off the dead flesh, she would come to lose too much blood and he had to remove those clothes off her or he would not be able to treat her no matter how good his medical skills were. Beside him in a purple robe, Jun Yao glanced at him and asked, "What?" "It's very difficult." "In terms of difficulty, it's not that hard. I just have to cut off the parts where the flesh has rotted and died, have her grow back new flesh and she'll be fine. But as the wound covers the entire back, to cut off the dead flesh, I will have to remove her clothes." Bai Zhiyan's voice trailed off at the end, becoming so soft it was not even audible, as he saw the face of a particular man turn terrifying looking. "Remove her clothes?" Jun Yao's voice was calm, and it was impossible to tell whether he was angry or relieved, but it caused a chill to run down Bai Zhiyan's spine. Bai Zhiyan's face became aggrieved. "How am I even going to be able to see the wound properly without removing her clothes? Am I supposed to see through the cloth? If it turns out that anything is not done properly, you cannot then hold it against me. Damn it! What does that look on this guy's face mean by looking at him like he's some kind of lecher here? It is as if he is dead set on taking advantage of the lass now." Jun Yao deliberated on it for a brief moment and then said emotionlessly, "You close your eyes." Bai Zhiyan's pretty-looking plum blossom eyes flared wide incredulously, looking at the man in utter disbelief. Does this fellow really have to carry it so far? A healer's eyes does not discriminate a patient between male and female, you know. He is going to give her treatment here, and not being a thug to take liberties with her. Can you calm yourself down a little? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Tell me what needs to be done, and I'll do it. Jun Yao was determined and resolute, clearly not giving him any chance of seeing the lass at all. But his words just earned him Bai Zhiyan's utter shock and displeasure. "You are not an elixir cultivator, how are you even going to be able to do it? Moreover, if I am not allowed to see her wound, it is all right for you to do it? Why does he feel that there's something strange going on here?" Unexpectedly, the man's gaze turned to glance at him expressionlessly as he said in a tone like it was the most natural thing in the world, "Little Fox is Aunt Lan's daughter and so I can be considered to be her elder. It is not the same situation in my case." Upon saying that, he went on to ignore Bai Zhiyan's stupefied expression and went to sit by the bed, gently carrying the young lady up to lie face down over his lap. Chapter 196. 3. Close your eyes. Don't look at what you're not supposed to see. He had initially wanted to take off her blood-soaked clothes for her, and now that too long a time had passed, the clothes were now stuck to the mangled mess of blood and flesh, where the slightest tug would cause a groan of agony to escape through the young lady's lips. Jun Yao was unable to help himself but knit his brows as he contemplated for a moment before he said to Bai Ji Yen, "Turn yourself around." Bai Ji Yen seemed to understand what the man wanted to do and obediently turned himself around. The next second, he then heard what he thought must be the sound of clothes disintegrating. The moment the naked skin was exposed to the cold air, a faint layer of goose pimples immediately formed over it. The young lady was dressed only in a thin strap underwear, her fair smooth-skinned arms and her entire back fully revealed. The skin that was always hidden beneath clothes was smooth and beautiful as jade, but her back that should be as alluringly beautiful was instead looking exceptionally frightening with the cauterized wound covering over a large area of her skin. Jun Yao's brows knitted more tightly together. To think that this impish lass would get herself hurt so badly. You promised that you would not let yourself get hurt but have immediately come to pay such a high price. You deserve a spanking. But when he saw her so gravely hurt and was not even fully conscious, looking like a pitiful little kitten lying there without moving at all, Jun Yao felt so helpless as his heart wrenched up in pain. The little one just can't take good care of herself. If any other woman were to be hurt to such an extent, it would just be courting death. Seeing that there was no further reaction from the man for so long, Bai Ji Yen could not resist opening his mouth to say, "Snap out of it already. If we delay it for too long, the lass injuries are going to leave a scar." The dark zombie's dark powers was really too strong and she was really unlucky to run into it. But fortunately the poison did not seep into her bones, so she can still be saved. Jun Yao quickly returned to his senses. "What do I need to do? Will you really be able to do it? You need to cut off the rotten flesh and apply medicine to the wound to stop the bleeding, and then you do it. Cover your eyes." In the end, Bai Ji Yen still had to do it, his eyes blindfolded throughout the entire process as Jun Yao guided him at the side. The wound was dealt with rather well, but as the process was really too painful, Jun Yao reached his hand out to strike the young lady on her sleep acupoint, rendering her completely unconscious as she fell into a dead faint. Her entire back was bandaged up completely as the wound must not come in contact with water for a period. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao pulled the thin blanket at the side to gently cover over the young lady's frail body. Bai Ji Yen then removed the blindfold covering his eyes without any expression on his face. This was probably the first time he had to handle such a difficult patient and he was feeling a little discomfited. Her injuries are just too severe. To prevent any infection, she will need to take medicine for the next few days. Watch over her while I go brew the medicine. Jun Yao nodded. Bai Ji Yen opened the door and went out. The people waiting outside immediately moved to surround him. Qing Bei looked a little anxious as he asked, "How is Qing Yu doing?" Bai Ji Yen glanced at him and said, "She's fine now." Upon saying that, he immediately walked away, leaving the place. Chapter 196. 4. Close your eyes. Don't look at what you're not supposed to see. Qing Bei raised a foot wanting to go onto the room to have a look, but two black armor-clad men suddenly appeared soundlessly before the door to block his way and said, "Please leave." Qing Bei's brows creased up. "That is my sister in there. I only want to go in to see how are her injuries." The black-clad man smiled politely and replied, "The Lord is in there. Miss Qing will be fine." It looked like Jun Yao must have ordered that no one was to go in to disturb Qing Yu. Qing Bei gritted his teeth together, feeling a little angry, but he did not say anything as the man had saved Qing Yu after all. Seeing that the youth was not going to insist, the two black-clad men then slowly left to conceal themselves, disappearing without a trace. Mu Lai's eyes flashed when she saw that, and she went to ask Qing Bei, "Is this Lu Baiqian really just a teacher in the deviant department? I am not too sure about his identity as well, only knowing that he is one of my sister's friends. Qing Bei replied. Actually Qin Yu had told him before that the man with the violet eyes had come from Cloud Heaven, the highest realm, and that he was an old friend of their mother who meant them no harm, but Qin Bei was not about to reveal the man's identity so readily. Time passed bit by bit, a slow trickle. It was already deep into the night when they came out from the forbidden grounds. It was almost time to welcome a new day, and after today, it would be the day of the three great sex friendship meet. And Qin Yu had showed no signs of regaining consciousness at all, not stirring at all throughout the whole night. Bai Ji Yen was carrying an intricate little green bowl with inky black medicine brew inside. The moment he came in, Jun Yao knitted up his brows. What is this? A tonic made with spirit restoration fruit mixed with 12 other kinds of herbs that are good for the healing of wounds. She lost a lot of blood, so her body will be greatly weakened if she does not drink this. Bai Ji Yen explained. Jun Yao raised an eyebrow as he glanced at him. Thanks. The spirit restoration fruit was a rare treasure, something in Cloud Heaven that one would be hard-pressed to get even with great amounts of gold. To think that he would actually use it nourished the last body. This fella's bark is worse than his bite, a softy at heart who actually cares for the little lass. Jun Yao took the porcelain bowl and turned the young lady over. Cradling her neck in one arm, he scooped up a spoonful of the medicine and brought it up to her colorless lips, where it then went down her throat smoothly. But before he could feed her the second spoonful, he saw the young lady's brows crease up and then vomit out the medicine. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Seeing that, Jun Yao was taken aback a moment before he asked, "What's happening?" Bai Ji Yen raised an eyebrow in puzzlement. There is no problem with the medicine as they are all gentle and soothing herbs. By right, there shouldn't be such an intense reaction. Jun Yao then attempted to feed her another mouthful, but the result was the same as the first time, where her brows knitted up before she vomited it out while still unconscious, like it was impossible for her to ingest any of the medicine at all. Let me go brew up another portion of the medicine. Upon saying that, Bai Ji Yen turned around and went out, to bump right into Qin Bei. Chapter 197. 1. Jun Yao. You sex maniac. Seeing him come out, Qin Bei was first surprised for a moment before he went on to ask, "Has Qin Yu woken up yet?" Bai Ji Yen shook his head. She was unable to keep her medicine down and vomited them out. I am going to contemplate on the herbs to use and brew another batch of medicine for her. After saying that, he was just about to leave but was held back by Qin Bei calling out to him. He turned his head around to look at the youth in puzzlement. Qin Yu is most afraid of taking medicinal brews since she was very young, as she has always been very healthy and seldom fell ill. Even when she fell sick, she would not take medicinal brews but just gritted her teeth till she recovered on her own because she would vomit once she was given those bitter brews. She handles pills and elixirs somewhat better, but medicinal brews are things that she would never be able to drink. Qin Bei said with a helpless sigh. Upon hearing those words, Bai Ji Yan's eyes widened in astoundment. An elixir cultivator who is afraid of drinking medicinal brew? The lass is truly not the same as any of my tribe. An elixir cultivator would need to learn to identify herbs through their scent and taste, so they must not exhibit any signs of allergies or resistance against herbs and medicinal brews. Bai Ji Yan had seen the lass identify medicine before but had not seen her show any adverse reactions. Never would he have thought that she would actually be afraid of taking medicinal brews. Bai Ji Yan then shrugged his shoulders. All right then, I'll think of a way. Can I go in to see Qin Yu? Qin Bei then opened his mouth to ask. Come on in. But she has not woken up. Bai Ji Yan said as he led Qin Bei into the room together with him. But the moment they went in, the scene that met their eyes caused the two of them to be stunned in their spots, their eyes wide and their mouths agape. The tall slender-figured man was seated by the bed, an arm draped around the young lady's shoulders, her body gingerly leaning against him. His other hand was holding the intricate little porcelain bowl and bringing it up to his own lips, his face expressionless as he took a mouthful of the inky black brew. He then pressed his lips against the young lady's pale colorless lips, before slowly transferring the medicinal brew into her mouth. The taste was of the medicinal brew was probably not too great as the man's handsome face contorted, creasing up slightly, but he still patiently went on to feed her mouthful by mouthful, and not a single drop of the brew spilled throughout the process. Very soon, the bottom on the inside of the entire bowl of medicinal brew could be seen. Bai Zhiyan and Qing Bei stood there frozen like they had been struck on their acupoints, stunned into a daze and were unable to react at all for a good long while. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. A good while passed after finishing the bowl of medicinal brew, the young lady's exquisite-looking brows then creased up, looking like she was feeling uncomfortable and was going to vomit the medicine out. But a man's magnetic and pleasing voice sounded beside her ear, with a slightly threatening tinge. It said, "If you dare to vomit that out, I will feed you another 2 bowls." Even though she was drifting in and out of semi-consciousness, the young lady was instinctively afraid of drinking medicinal brews, and her body then obediently went on to keep the medicine in, not vomiting it out. The man's lips then curved up in a satisfied smile, before he gently laid her back down onto the bed. As she was wounded on her back, he could only lie her on her side. Although that posture might not be that comfortable, there was nothing else he could do. He pulled the thin blanket to cover snugly around the young lady's body, and turned around to see 2 dumbfounded statues standing at the door, like they had just witnessed something most astounding. Chapter 197. 2. Jun Yao. You sex maniac. Jun Yao raised his foot to go walk towards them outside, and even gently pulled the door closed behind him. That was when Bai Zhiyan then managed to recover to his senses. He gulped loudly and then stammered, "She finished it all." Jun Yao answered indifferently, and the expression on his face could not be any more normal. Bai Zhiyan's gaze grew highly complicated. "And you took advantage of the fact that the lass is still unconscious to do something like this? What an aggrieving and lamentful thing to see." Jun Yao then glanced at the man, the expression on his face confused. "What did I do? You beast! You're not even going to admit it." He had seen it all so clearly. Jun Yao looked at Bai Zhiyan's highly indignant look, he arched up an eyebrow to look at the man before he said, "I was merely feeding her medicine." "What kind of a messed up thing are you thinking in your mind? Your method of feeding medicine is so unique that maybe I might want to fall ill next time as well." Bai Zhiyan shot back. "You do not have to worry. I will get Ling Shu to do it for you." Bai Zhiyan found himself completely speechless. Must he really show such utter discrimination? Jun Yao went on to ignore the man and turned to the handsome youth at the side. "I heard that you were tricked and brought into the forbidden grounds. Are you hurt?" Qing Bei shook his head. "I am fine. I was too careless and dragged Qing Yu into it. She went in there only because of me." Jun Yao looked at the highly remorseful youth and he patted the young man on the shoulder. "You are not to blame. It is fated that she has to undergo this trial. Things will be fine once it passes." Qing Bei suddenly recalled the scene that he had just witnessed and his face turned rather hot. His eyes glanced highly fleetingly at the man and he then started to say hesitantly, "You were just. Her body is greatly weakened and that was a medicinal tonic that is highly nourishing for her. If she does not drink that, her recovery will be very slow and her wounds might even get infected." Jun Yao curved up his lips in a reassuring smile and explained in a gentle voice. Qing Bei barely managed to utter a halting "oh" before he then asked weakly in a very soft voice, "Are you interested in Qing Yu in that manner?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Actually he had always wanted to ask that question. It seemed like every time something happened to Qing Yu, he would always appear in the nick of time. And the way he gazes at Qing Yu, just made it impossible for anyone to not think deeper into it. He claimed that it was because of his friendship with their mother that was making him show them such concern, but it was becoming clear that the real reason this mysterious and unfathomable man kept appearing was all because of Jun Yao. That rather embarrassing question came to cause Bai Zhiyan to raise an eyebrow, rather intrigued himself, enough to make him look at the man to ask, "I am rather curious as well. Are you harboring ulterior motives towards the little lass, and has illicit designs on her?" The lass has a face that was more beautiful than any words could describe, definitely the type that men would absolutely adore. Tinged with pure innocence within that beauty, where every frown and every smile was exceptionally alluring. Even when disguised as a male, she had mesmerized a whole bunch of ladies, making them fall head over heels in love with her. Chapter 197. 3. Jun Yao. You sex maniac. Moreover, she was not just an empty vase that had nothing but beauty. She possessed top-notch skills in medicine and poisons, high and unfathomable cultivation, was highly intelligent and black-bellied, not weak and frail like most other ladies who only knew how to seek protection from men. With a brave and strong heart, her personality was one that was really just too lovable. Disregarding other things for the moment, Bai Zhiyan actually rather liked the lass quite a lot, just not in the way a man loves a woman. He was too used to fooling around and it was hard for his heart to settle down, so what he had for the young lady was just purely admiration. But it was hard to say for this fellow Jun Yao here. He seemed to be acting rather strange, always claiming that he was showing concern for a junior as an elder. Such unbelievable words will only fool a mindless moron. See, he has even come to steal kisses with that flimsy excuse of feeding her medicine, see how he can further deny it. Towards that, Jun Yao merely just laughed softly, and his violet eyes looked even sparkling bright with that smile. Under the two other people's pressing gazes, the man then said with a mirthful-sounding voice, "Such words must not be said to her face as young ladies are more thin-skinned and it might be perplexing for them to hear something like this. Anyway, I am going to get some rest and I do not wish to be disturbed." After saying that, Jun Yao then went back into the room, and a soft sound was then heard behind the door. He had actually locked the door from the inside. Qin Bei's face was confused. The man did not seem to have understood his question. Bai Zhiyan was equally speechless. So had he admitted to it or not? He did not even explain it fully, such a detestable habit. But the fellow was probably really exhausted. He had yet to fully recover from his injuries, having lost so much blood and had not had the chance to properly recuperate before tearing his way through dimensional space to cross two realms. Immediately upon arriving, he had to then defeat that powerful dark zombie, not sleeping a wink throughout the night as he was worried for the last condition. Even the greatest body constitution would not be able to withstand such torment. When that thought came to mind, Bai Zhiyan then started to sympathize with the man, but then he suddenly remembered something else. In that room, it seems like there is only one bed. Although the bed is large, but it is still just one bed. And Jun Yao was already sleeping on it, so where is he going to sleep? He must have purposely changed the topic just now, intent on hugging the lass to sleep. Such a sly one he is. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao was unconscious for an entire day and night. When she opened her eyes again, she could see the last remnant rays of the setting sun through the half-closed windows. She blinked her eyes a couple of times, still feeling groggy with sleep, and did not move for a good while. Till she sensed the sound of soft breathing beside her, and a warm palm placed over the back of her hand. She then came back to her senses, her gaze turning to look to the side. The man's handsome face was just inches away, the long luscious eyelashes hanging quietly as they cast tiny fan-shaped shadows over his cheeks, looking a little adorable. His thin lips were slightly parted, and when he did not smile, they felt a little cold, but when they curved up into a devilish arc, they were able to mesmerize so many countless pairs of eyes. Chapter 197. 4. Jun Yao. You sex maniac. Qin Yu blinked her eyes to drive away the grogginess. She then blinked them again. So when this fella is sleeping, he looks so gentle and kind. But, where is this place she is in now? Isn't she supposed to be in the Forbidden Grounds? This fella must have appeared and defeated that dark zombie. But why is she sleeping here beside him? And sleeping so soundly at that? She has woken up for quite a while and he did not seem to have sensed anything at all. As Qin Yu had been asleep for too long, her body was feeling rather sluggish and weak. She wanted to get off and walk around but did not realize that her entire back was so badly wounded there wasn't an inch of undamaged skin on it. She then flipped herself onto her back and tragically came to lie onto her back. Ugh! The excruciating pain wrecked her body all of a sudden, catching her off guard, and she gasped out in shock. Jun Yao heard the sound and stirred awake. The first thing that met his eyes was the young lady's beautiful-looking eyes that looked like a phoenix's, that were misted over with what almost seemed to be tears, looking so pitiful and in pain. He could not help but curved his lips up in an arc. You've come awake. Qin Yu looked at him like she didn't want to live anymore, clenching her jaws tightly together as she said in a trembling voice, "WH. What happened to me? Why does it feel as if she had a few layers of her flesh skinned off her back?" It was so painful that she had started to doubt wanting to live. Hearing her ask that, the smile on Jun Yao's face deepened, and his long slender fingers pinched her on the cheek as he said with an almost imperceptible smile. "You still have the cheek to ask. You think your body's forged from steel that you actually went to block such a dangerous attack for another man? Don't you think you deserve a beating? Who was the one who promised me that she would take good care of herself?" Qin Yu knew that she was in the wrong and she did not argue back but merely said weakly, "But I cannot very well just stand back and watch him die, can I? Moreover, having me getting slightly injured is better than sending him right to his death, isn't it?" Jun Yao's eyes narrowed dangerously. "And who is this man?" Qin Yu answered, "You should have seen him back there. He's quite a unique kind of assassin." Jun Yao laughed. "Unique in what way?" "Exceptionally good-looking." Qin Yu deliberated on it for a moment before she nodded her head. "He is indeed rather good-looking." In the end, the man's gaze almost bored a hole through her body which felt a little too terrifying. Qin Yu subconsciously took a step back to avoid those eyes that then caused her to pull her wound. The pain made her wish that she was dead, her tearful face indescribable. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao saw how pitiful she looked and found it both infuriating and funny at the same time. He stretched his hand out to hold her arm, not allowing her to make any careless moves, and said in a gentle voice, "Let me see if your wound has split open." "No." Qin Yu shook her head. She was wounded on her back and she would have to take off her clothes to see the wound. Men and women should avoid such close physical contact. But in the midst of the pulling and tugging, the blanket around her body slipped off and she felt a chill over her shoulder. Qin Yu lowered her eyes to look down in puzzlement. That one look immediately caused her face to burn red. Jun Yao. Chapter 198. 1. The devil's usual teasing of the little fox. The young lady's beautiful face flushed red as she gripped the blanket tightly in her hand, almost embarrassed to death. Jun Yao arched up an eyebrow as he massaged his ears that had almost gone deaf from the young lady's high-decibel scream just now. He then let out a helpless-sounding sigh. "What's wrong now? Where are my clothes?" Qin Yu was almost going to explode. Under the blanket, except for a tiny thin piece of underwear, there was nothing else. The flimsy piece of clothing was barely just covering the most important parts and exposing everything else, which was as good as not wearing anything at all. And this fella here had the cheek to still ask what's wrong. The expression on Jun Yao's face did not change in the slightest, remaining calm and composed as he replied, "You were consumed and became corrupted by the dark zombie's aura. your body was almost completely lost. Do you really think there was time to be concerned about your clothes? Qin Yu's anger rose even further as she glared at him. So where have my clothes gone? They were too tattered and torn to be worn and I threw them away. Jun Yao responded casually. You took my clothes off. Qin Yu raged. Jun Yao's eyebrow raised up in indifference. Who else do you think it would be? That wound on your back requires frequent changes of medicine, so you won't be wearing any clothes for a while. Qin Yu fell silent and quietly went back to prone down, her head facing away, like she did not want to look at the man a moment longer. Jun Yao then smiled and shook his head helplessly as he stretched a hand out to stroke the young lady's soft hair softly as he said in a gentle reassuring voice, "Why are you kicking up such a big fuss for? Didn't I leave a piece of clothing on for you? Do you even need to feel so embarrassed?" How did he know that the little fox was feeling embarrassed? It was because he could clearly see that the exposed nape of her neck and her adorable small ear were stained with a light pink flush. After he said that, the young lady merely let out a derisive snort of contempt and continued to ignore the man. The violet shade in Jun Yao's eyes deepened, and an elegant and alluring smile came onto his face. His tall slender frame then went on to crouch down beside the young lady's ear as he whispered with soft gentle mirth in his voice, "Don't be angry already, will you? Or should I take all my clothes off here as well so you can see everything of mine in return? Moreover, my heart was so fixated with worry on your injuries that my eyes were really too blind to see anything else." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu really felt like beating someone up at that moment as her fingers curled tightly around the edge of the blanket. Her words then came out through tightly clenched teeth, "And what was it that you would like to see?" I only saw that the little fox has really fair skin and has an excellent figure, completely perfect. Though young, I must say it's well filled in all the right places." "Shut up." Qin Yu's face was so red it felt like it was going to explode. It was so embarrassing hearing her figure being assessed by this thug. Damn him. Her entire body was hidden under the blanket without a single inch of her showing. If that blanket was lifted at that moment, one would come to discover that her fair smooth skin had already turned as red as a thoroughly cooked lobster. Chapter 198. 2. The devil's usual teasing of the little fox. Jun Yao was unable to stifle the laugh that rose up in his throat, and he saw that the little fox almost on the verge of exploding from his relentless teasing before deciding to relent. His fingers then tugged gently at a corner of the blanket as he coaxed, "Let your head out from under the blanket at least. Are you trying to suffocate yourself to death? Why do you care?" The tone of voice was completely like that of a willful little girl speaking in pique. It must be said that it could not sound any more adorable. It is well known that it is harder to see this side of Qin Yu than to reach the heavens, as she was never a weak and helpless lady who liked to throw little tantrums like that. So, upon hearing her sound so miffed and acting so spoilt, Jun Yao's heart could not help but to melt into mush. The smiles on his handsome face were so full it was almost spilling out, and he went on to say, absolutely beaming, "If you are going to continue to hide yourself in there, I will just destroy that blanket completely. And if I come to see anything that I shouldn't have, you had better not blame me." He had not thought that the candid little one who never bothered herself with small piffling details most of the time would actually get embarrassed so easily. It's really quite an amusing sight. Just as he expected, once those threatening words came out, the young lady slowly stuck her head out begrudgingly from beneath the blanket, the look in her eyes seemingly indignant and angry. "Just have to be firm with the little one." Jun Yao pinched her on her cheeks and showed her a disarming smile. "Since you're awake, drink the medicine on your own." Qin Yu's anger still had not subsided from his threatening ways earlier, and she was suddenly taken aback by what the man just said. "What?" Jun Yao stretched out his arm and picked up a porcelain bowl from the table at the side. Before he even brought it close, Qin Yu could already smell the thick robust scent of the herbal concoction. Her brows seemed to furrow up instinctively as she turned her head away. Keep that away from me. Jun Yao's face became surprised when he saw her reaction, and his violet orbs looked at the young lady with amusement. Now I know that there are elixir cultivators who are afraid of taking medicine. Take that out. Qin Yu repeated. Although the wound on her back restricted her movements by quite a bit, the young lady still managed to shift her body to one side, shying away from the bowl. It seemed like she really disliked taking medicinal concoctions. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao looked at her with a smile as his long slender fingers lifted the spoon and stirred the contents in the bowl lightly. The temperature was just right. Be good and finish your medicine. Otherwise your back might not look so beautiful anymore if the injury leaves a scar. Jun Yao coaxed gently. Unfortunately, Qin Yu was not about to be taken in by those words, and she went on to say with a sneer, showing obstinate indifference, I can't see my own back anyway, and my body is covered with clothes most of the time, so no one will see the scar at all. Anyone who roams the pugilist world will always end up getting hurt someplace. It's nothing for a person to have a scar or two on their body. Ho, she was being quite carefree and unbothered by it. If it was any other woman, even a thumb-sized scar on their body would have them bawling their eyes out. Qin Yu's entire back was covered in wounds, and here she was showing complete indifference. You were so good and cooperative with the medicine when you were unconscious. Why are you refusing it the moment you wake up? Jun Yao asked with a glint in his eye. You still need me to feed it to you before you'll drink it? Chapter 198. 3. The devil's usual teasing of the little fox. Upon hearing that, Qin Yu's eyes widened in surprise, and she started to ask, I drank that medicine while I was unconscious? How is that possible? She had been afraid of taking medicinal concoctions all this time, even from her previous life, and it was not because this body was rejecting it, but an innate psychological aversion to them in her mind. Hence, she knew that there was no way that she would be able to consume the medicine even if she was unconscious. She could still remember how she had fallen into a coma from a high fever in the past, when her condition became so serious just because she was unable to drink any medicinal brew. So, Qin Yu was not going to believe him when he said that she had obediently drunk her medicine while she was unconscious. Jun Yao saw her looking at him suspiciously, and he raised an eyebrow as he smiled. Could it be because you liked the method I used to feed you? What? Qin Yu asked with a bewildered look on her face. Though she posed a question to him, the man did not say another word but just looked at her meaningful gaze, the glint in his eyes strangely fervid. Qin Yu did not know how to react at that moment, but quickly came to discover that his gaze seemed to be staring at her lips. Her phoenix-like eyes then widened up in disbelief. Don't tell me you. Jun Yao did not respond to her question but just smiled at her as he asked, do you need me to feed you? Qin Yu's hand unwittingly stretched out to take the porcelain bowl from him. I drink it on my own. The man then nodded his head in satisfaction. Good girl. At that moment, Qin Yu's mind was in a whirl, her heart in shock with the thought that while she was unconscious, this scoundrel had. She downed the medicine in one single gulp, and her body immediately showed signs of rejection and nausea. As the taste of the medicine had been really strong, the shade on Qin Yu's face changed and she felt like throwing up. The very next instant, something soft and sweet was shoved into her mouth, immediately flushing the disgusting taste inside, and she felt a whole lot better. Qin Yu bit her teeth lightly on it, and found that it was sour inside, which tasted rather nice. She then blinked her eyes. What is it? Lotus heart candy. All the little kids in Cloud Heaven love them. Whenever they cry or throw a tantrum, give them a lotus heart candy and they'll quiet down. Jun Yao said with a smile on his face. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You're treating me like a kid. Qin Yu threw the man an angry glare. The man stretched his hand out and caressed her hair gently, before he said teasingly, because you're acting like a child here. Only children are afraid of taking their medicine, and be so disobedient. The urge to hit someone rose up inside once again. What's the date today? Jun Yao suddenly remembered something important, and turned to the man to ask. Jun Yao knew what she was trying to ask about, and he immediately arched up an eyebrow as he said to the young lady, "You slept through an entire day and night, and the 3 great sex friendship meet is tomorrow. Now, don't go thinking that you were lucky enough that you have not missed it. You'd better not take part with all your injuries, as moving around too much might cause your wounds to tear and open up again. Moreover, you will need to climb down a sheer flat cliff that is filled with all kinds of hidden traps to get to the carefree valley, which should be clear that it is completely impossible for you now." Chapter 198. 4. The devil's usual teasing of the little fox, but my name has already been submitted. Do I really have to give it up and not attend the meet? Jun Yao was feeling a little frustrated. Or do you think your injuries were too light? Jun Yao shot her a sharp glance. What's so fun about all this fighting and killing anyway? Moreover, among all those guys in the carefree valley, besides Shi Zhanchen himself, who could be said to possess some capability at least, the rest of them are just merely part of a useless mob. Why would you want to get yourself involved with them at all? Jun Yao had wanted to say something in response but was mercilessly interrupted. There is no room for discussion. With your injuries, even if we use the best top-grade miracle herbs, you will need at least 2 weeks to fully recover. Before that happens, be good and do not bother about anything else but just concentrate on recuperation. Can't I just go there to have a look around? The small and exquisite face was still a little pale, and she looked so adorably pitiful as she looked up at him pleadingly. But Jun Yao's heart did not soften in the slightest as he went on to say in an emotionless tone, "No way. You're not my father. What right do you have telling me what to do?" Jun Yao said in a huff, feeling indignant. Jun Yao laughed aloud when he heard those words, the violet shade of his eyes darkening slightly. "If I have such a disobedient daughter like you, I would have long given you a good thrashing." His words sounded firm and resolute at that moment, not knowing that when he were to really become a father, he would actually be such a complete slave to his daughter, not to mention raising his hand against her. If anyone wanted to say anything bad about her daughter, they had better not let him hear a word of it, otherwise, they would then come to find out the reason he is famed as a notorious tyrant. Pausing for a moment, Jun Yao saw the unhappy look on the young lady's face and finally gave in. Letting out a soft sigh, he then went on to say, "I'll take you there to have a look, but keep in mind that you can only watch with your eyes and not make a single move, not even a single finger." "I promise." The young lady who had been sulking immediately perked up in an instant, putting her hand up to speak, looking highly obedient and ready to cooperate. "Are you hungry? Want something to eat?" Jun Yao then asked in a gentle voice. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, in a while. I want to see Little Bay first. I don't even know whether that fella met with any danger in the Forbidden Grounds. That's right, I think there is something strange and unusual about that dark zombie. It shouldn't appear here in the Constellation Lands at all. Qing Bay is fine. As for the dark zombie, its appearance there is indeed unusual. I will have it looked into and you do not have to worry about it. Just keep your mind on recuperating from your injury. As Jun Yao spoke, he stretched a hand out to pull up the blanket that Jun Yao had unconsciously allowed to slip slightly off her shoulder. Although the wounds on her back were too ghastly to look at, the skin on the front was still flawlessly smooth and unblemished. Especially that deep nook of her beautiful collarbone just below her long slender neck, it was just so exquisite and well defined. He found himself unable to turn his gaze away from them. Chapter 199. 1. Older men know how to dote on ladies. Bet are her long hair cascaded down, looking a little languid and lazy, adding an exquisite allure onto that tiny face. Together with the smooth shoulder that was titillatingly exposed, she really was quite seductive looking at that moment. She had truly inherited all the best points from the most divinely beautiful couple of cloud heaven back then, her looks and intelligence overshadowing her parents. It was believed that if Aunt Lon were to see that she has a daughter that was so much like her, she would definitely be greatly comforted. Jun Yao stretched his hand out to pat her on the head. Rest well. Be careful to not squash your wound on your back. Qin Yu nodded, and then opened her mouth to ask. Where are you going? The moment those words came out from her mouth, she immediately felt that her question was a little weird. As expected, the man's expression seemed to be tinged with a faint imperceptible smile as he then said, What? You want me to keep you company? Can't bear for me to leave? Qin Yu looked at him without any expression. Can't bear your head. Jun Yao laughed softly, but did not continue to tease her. The tall figure then stood up at the side of the bed, before opening the door to go out. Bai Yan had been waiting outside the door, and when he saw the man come out, he raised his eyebrows and asked, Has the little lass woken up? She's now awake. And she even drank the medicine just now. Jun Yao said with a smile. Bai Yan nodded his head happily, and the two men then walked a distance before Bai Yan opened his mouth to say, It is as you predicted. Ling Shu met with a little trouble in the White Fen's lands and is unable to come back for a while. What happened? The Feng family's second young master is indeed Feng Tianhen, and the Feng family now is not the same as before anymore. Their family head Feng Sun has not handled the family clan's affairs for many years, and their young heir has become sickly and ill in recent years, unable to come out to see anyone. The young heir Feng Tianjin's authority is gradually being diminished, and all of the clan's affairs big and small is controlled by Feng Tianhen alone, where no one dares to go against him at all. The Feng family can be said to be well entrenched in its position as the top family clan in the White Fen's lands now, and it could be seen from here how skillfully manipulative a person he is, as this is not something any mediocre person can possibly achieve. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Jun Yao laughed scoffingly. It is said that the Feng family's young heir is timid as a mouse, a man who did not accomplish anything even after reaching 20 over years in age, a well-known useless good-for-nothing. To be able to pocket such a large family clan entirely in just a short few years like that is truly not an easy task. It's more than just difficult. It is like his entire person has been taken over and has changed into another person completely. Bai Yan said with amazement. And those words he said unintentionally came to cause Jun Yao's eyes to deepen. He had really hit the nail right on the head this time. Feng Tianhen is really not the original Feng Tianhen anymore. He recalled to the night when Qin Yu had been so helpless and weak. That was the inner demons that consumed her heart. Chapter 199. 2. Older men know how to dote on ladies better. The violet irises surged with a silent turbulence within, which faded away in the next instant. How is Ling Shu? He sustained slight injuries. He was too careless, and it will be a lesson for him to be more alert from now on. At least he was smart enough to know where it was safest for him to hide. The rampaging massacre you unintentionally committed back then turned out to be a good thing. Bai Yan said teasingly. When he heard that, Jun Yao immediately understood what Bai Yan was referring to, and he asked in surprise, He went to the Bellied family? Bai Yan nodded and said with a laugh, The kid from the Bellied family rescued him in secret. That kid is someone who knows to repay a debt and has been thinking how he is supposed to return the favor, but has failed to find a way for so long. This finally gave him an opportunity to make himself useful to you. Jun Yao's lips curved up into a smile. When the occasion arises, look for a chance for you to go to the White Fen's lands in my stead, to express my gratitude. You can't be thinking of staying here again and not go back, are you? How long did you stay in Cloud Heaven on your last trip? You had not even met up with the whole lot of them when you already came running back here. All of them must be hopping with rage right now. Bai Yen glanced at the man and said, his voice tinged with displeasure. Of course I will go back. The seal on Mo Jingyu has been released and he might come awake at any moment, so I am just waiting for the most opportune moment. The instant that guy comes awake, knowing him, he will definitely stir up tumultuous chaos in Cloud Heaven, so I cannot remain here for long. But as the little fox has yet to recover from her injuries, and she isn't exactly someone who prioritizes safety, I will leave only after she has fully recovered. Bai Yen laughed helplessly. You are really worrying your heart to pieces for the lass here, when you are always the one that makes everyone worry for you the most. Turning the conversation's topic onto the man, Bai Yan's attractive plum blossom eyes then looked smilingly at him. You still have not answered me yet. Do have ulterior designs on the little lass. Stop trying to deny it. I've been immersed in the amorous world for so many years after all, how could I possibly be unable to see what you're really thinking? Jun Yao's gaze seemed as though he was looking at an idiot, as he said in an indifferent voice, since you are able to see, why do you still ask? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Those words felt so much like an indirect admission. Although Bai Yen had been second-guessing it all this while and that answer could be said to be something he should have expected, but upon hearing the tacit acquiescence in the man's response, it still shocked Bai Yen quite a bit. You're really... Bai Yen just could not describe what he was feeling at that moment. This was a ruthless and cold-blooded man who saw himself to be above all things, where people were always mesmerized by his handsome and graceful looks. But one would only truly come to know just how heartless this man was after having interacted with him, to see that his heart was colder and harder than any icy glacier. This was linked to what he experienced when he was very young, which came to mold his character to be such. It could be said that he was selfish and merciless, where only two types of people existed in his eyes, people who were either useful or useless to him. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.